We're going to begin the lymphatic system. The functions of the lymphatic system include production, maintenance, and distribution of lymphocytes, returns fluids and solutes back into the bloodstream, and distributes hormones, nutrients, and waste products back into circulation. The lymphatic system is the system that protects our body from foreign invaders. This includes viruses, cancers, funguses, parasites, and cancer to a certain extent. Pictured are some of the organs of the lymphatic system. They include the thymus gland, the lymph nodes, the spleen, the Peyer's patch, the appendix. There are two parts of the lymphatic system. The first one is the nonspecific or innate defense system. It provides immediate defense against foreign substances. This is comprised of your skin, your integumentary system, the mucous membranes, and the inflammatory response. It doesn't specifically attack against any one foreign substance. It doesn't differentiate. The second part of the lymphatic system is the specific defense system, or what we call the true lymphatic system. This works to fight against bacteria, viruses, diseases that enter or form inside the human body. It protects us from these things, and that includes transplanted organs, grafts, and even cells that turn against us. This is an overview of the lymphatic or immune system. We have the innate or nonspecific system, which has cellular components and humoral components, and then we have the adaptive or specific defense system that has cellular components and humoral components. Now let's go into the actual cellular and chemical defenses. First, your lymphocytes. They account for about 20 to 30% of the circulating white blood cell population, and they're responsible for fighting bacteria and viruses that invade or form inside our bodies. There are three types of lymphocytes. T cells, that makes up 80% of the lymphocytes, and they are mainly produced in the thymus gland, and they're the cells, the helper T cells, which are attacked by the HIV virus. B cells make up 12% of the lymphocytes and help produce antibodies. And then the NK cells, or natural killer cells, are the remaining 8% of the lymphocytes. And they attack foreign cells, viruses, and cancer cells to an extent. We also have phagocytes, and they engulf and eat the foreign invaders or the bacteria that reach the surface membrane barrier. And then a pathogen is any disease-causing element. They can include viruses, bacteria, funguses, and parasites. And then necrosis is the death of tissue and skin. This is a picture of a neutrophil. There's also eosinophils and basophils. Here is a picture of macrophages attacking an E. coli bacteria. This picture illustrates the lymphatic system, which is parallel to the cardiovascular system, and how it moves from the blood capillaries to the interstitial fluids to the lymph capillaries to the lymph veins to the lymph ducts, and then the large veins. Now we're going to go into the non-specific defense system, or the protective mechanisms of the external system, and then the internal immune system. The first thing is the membrane barriers. That includes the epidermis. It's also called your skin, and it's the outer mechanical layer that shields the body from entry of pathogens and other harmful substances into the skin. Then we have our mucus. Mucus helps trap microorganisms in the respiratory, digestive, reproductive systems. We have nasal hair, which trap microorganisms in the nasal passages. We have gastric juice that has concentrated hydrochloric acid and protein digestion enzymes to destroy pathogens in the stomach. And then we have our lacrimal secretions and our tears and saliva. They provide constant lubrication and cleansing of the eyes and oral cavity in the form of saliva and tears, and they also have lysozyme, an enzyme that kills microorganisms. These are the cells of the immune system. Here we have the immune system, then you have your myeloid cells, and then they're divided into what you call granulolytic and monocytic cells. The granulolytic Granulocytic include the neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils, and the monocytic include the macrophages, the Kupffer glands, and then dendritic cells. Now in the lymphoid cells, we have the T cells, which include the helper T cells, the suppressor T cells, and the cytotoxic T cells. We have the B cells, which also include the plasma cells, and then we have the natural killer or NK cells. Now let's go into the organs and glands of the lymphatic system. First, we have our lymph nodes. They're small oval organs, and they range from about 1 millimeter to 1 inch in diameter. They're covered by connective tissue. The typical shape is that of a kidney bean, and its function is to filter and purify lymph fluids that reach the cardiovascular system. It can be used as a warning device because when infections occurs, they tend to swell, and doctors can detect the swelling in certain areas of the body, specifically the neck, the armpits, the axillary, and the groin area. Second is the thymus. This is a site of T cell formation. It's located behind the sternum and has a pinkish grainy color, weighs about 40 grams. Next is the spleen, and the spleen contains the largest amount of lymphoid tissue in the body. It weighs about 160 grams. It measures about 5 inches in length. It's found on the left side of the stomach between the ribs, numbers 9 through 11. It has a deep red color. It performs 3 major functions. It removes the abnormal red blood cells by phagocytosis. It stores iron from the recycled blood cells, and it starts the immune response for both the B cells and the T cells. A splenectomy is the removal of the spleen due to a serious injury, infection, or inflammation. The spleen is what's infected by mono. The spleen is a very delicate organ and is exposed to injury from sports such as football or hockey. A minor blow could tear your spleen and internal bleeding can occur. It's difficult to repair surgically because sutures tear out due to intense bleeding. A pathologist is a doctor that studies the origin and causes of disease. Now, let's talk about organ transplants and rejections. Due to serious diseases or life-ending functions of an organ, some people undergo organ transplants, and there are 4 major types of transplants. An autograft is when tissue grafts are transplanted from one site to another in the same person. Isografts are when tissue grafts are donated by a genetically identical person, such as a clone or what we call identical twins. Allografts are tissue grafts taken from an unrelated person, and xenografts are tissue grafts harvested from an animal of a different species, such as transplanting a baboon heart into a human being. Now let's talk about AIDS. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. AIDS was first recognized as a disease in 1981, and since then it's killed more than 300,000 Americans, and of course many more worldwide. HIV/AIDS is the most serious stage of a condition that disrupts the normal function of the immune system. AIDS is not a specific disease, but a condition in which the immune system cannot protect the body against a variety of pathogens. AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV. HIV attacks the human immune system by destroying the body's ability to fight disease. Once HIV enters the body, it attaches to receptors on the surface of a type of cell called the T cell. And specifically, it's the helper T cell, or the T4 cell. These cells are so named because they help other lymphocytes respond to the early stages of infection. As HIV destroys the helper T cells, the body loses its ability to fight off a disease. HIV destroys the body's ability to defend itself. This is an image of the AIDS virus. Let's talk about transmission of the disease. HIV can only be spread from one person to another only through direct contact of certain body fluids. Blood, semen, or breast milk. HIV is not spread by casual contact, such as holding a person's hands or using dishes previously used by an infected person. It is not transmitted by insects, such as mosquitoes, fleas, or ticks. Most often, HIV is transmitted through sexual intercourse, sharing needles, or by the transfusion of contaminated blood. HIV is now one of the fastest growing epidemics in the world. According to the United Nations AIDS Project, more than 22 million people worldwide are infected with HIV. Condoms reduce the risk of transmitting HIV from one person to another during sexual intercourse. Sharing needles with others is one of the main ways HIV/AIDS is transmitted from one person to another. You're never at risk of getting AIDS while donating blood, and blood is tested for HIV, and this has almost eliminated the risk of getting HIV from blood transfusions. At this point, there is no known cure for an HIV infection. At the present time, the best way to avoid an HIV infection is learn as much as you can about the ways it's transmitted and avoid those forms of transmission. In other words, be educated. Avoid the behaviors that place yourself at risk of contracting the virus. When first infected by the virus, a person may have flu-like symptoms or no symptoms at all. And within a few weeks to months, antibodies to HIV begin to appear in the blood. Now, in that time, HIV will be attacking and destroying the helper T cells. And the helper T cells are the specific cell that activate the immune system to fight an infection. When the number of helper T cells in the blood becomes so low, below 200 per milliliter, that immune system cannot fight disease. The individual has now begun to develop AIDS. People with AIDS die when their body's weakened immune system cannot fight off an opportunistic infection by a pathogen. Once a person has full-blown AIDS, they usually die within a few years from opportunistic infections. Scientists are trying to create vaccines for HIV, but must contend with a very rapid rate of evolution once inside the human body. Genes that code for the virus's surface proteins mutate frequently.